Trying to connect the clinical pictures that you learn in class to what you actually see in the clinical setting is a pretty unique struggle to third-year medical students who are just thrown into the rotation. In particular, the perfect example that I'm thinking of is that we learn that the diaphragmatic nerve, which innervates your diaphragm to help you breathe, when it gets irritated, you get hiccups and shoulder pain. The shoulder pain is because it runs up this way and then it also innervates something over here, so when it gets mixed up. Clinical picture that we learn in class: shoulder pain and hiccups. I was doing a post-op check on a patient after he had gotten abdominal surgery. And if you don't know, when people get abdominal surgery, their belly gets blown up with air so that the surgeons have room to move around and do their surgery. And after one of the surgeries, not the specific one of the residents asked me, "Dakota, do you know why we make sure that we try to squeeze as much air out of the abdomen again after the surgery?" Like, well, why wouldn't you? And he goes, well, because a lot of times the air, the gas that we use to insufflate it will just reabsorbed essentially. So then we don't really need to do that because it'll resolve on its own. And I was like, is it because on post-op imaging, it could be mistaken for a pneumoperitoneum? And that's fancy talk for air in the abdomen. And that could be bad because if you think that there's air in the abdomen, it could indicate like a bowel perforation or a really bad origin. No, that's good thinking, but it's much simpler than that. So I was thinking about it and I couldn't figure it out. And he goes, it's because the air, if we leave it in the abdomen or the gas, it'll dry out the highest point because the air rises, the gas rises, and that highest point is right under the diaphragm. So then the patients will complain of shoulder pain. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I saw this patient on his post-op check. I was asking him if he has any concerns. And he said that his only concern was that he can feel his heartbeat in his shoulder and he feels like he has to burp, but he can only really get out hiccup. I didn't realize what that meant, and I was like thinking about it and I couldn't figure it out, so I told him I'll check with the resident. And I told the resident and they didn't seem concerned, and I didn't have the time to ask them really what that meant, so that I kind of went home. And I kept thinking about it, and like 2 days later, I'm like, oh my goodness. It's because the air dried out the area under the diaphragm, and the phrenic nerve got irritated. So the heartbeat was the shoulder pain, and the feeling like he needs to burp but only getting out hiccups, that was that. So I had a really hard time just there. That's an example of when I had a really hard time translating the clinical picture into the actual what I saw in the clinic, because he didn't say shoulder pain and hiccups. He said my heartbeat in my shoulder and I feel like I have to burp, but it only comes out as a hiccup.